Welcome aboard. My name is Joe Farkas, and I'm the architect of this ship. And I'd like to tell you a story. This ship, the design of this ship, as well as all the ships that I have done for Carnival Cruise Lines, has a story. And that story begins with an idea. It's what I'd call a central idea. And that idea is some people like to call it a theme. I don't. It is a point where I begin all the designs. It's an intellectual idea for me to build artistic creations around that all of the public rooms on board of the ship follow, so that to me there is a coherence in the design that varies in how that's interpreted from room to room. The process begins by making the drawings that flesh out the central idea. These are all architectural drawings done to scale that show the floor plans, the ceiling plans, the main elevations and details, some of which we do on computer, but again, the initial drawings are all done by hand. Basically, everything that you see on this ship today is laid out by us and specified by us so that every note is carried out in some particular material or detail around the ship. We then turn all this documentation over to the shipyard, who in turn turns it over to the subcontractors who make each individual public room. And during this whole course of roughly about 2 years, we are in constant touch with the shipyard, going to the subcontractor, seeing mock-ups, watching it under construction. So it is a total hands-on job until the ship is finished and we're all sitting on board like we are now. In this case, when I began seriously thinking about what this ship should be, I had the idea of I began thinking about the process of how these ships are actually built. And they're really handcrafted constructions. Yes, there's computers that cut steel and bend steel and computer-aided design, drawings and so forth that are all part of the picture. But in the end, when you get shipwrights and the carpenters and the stone cutters and the fitters and so forth, it really is artisan work. And that idea sort of bounced around in my mind, and I thought, gee, why don't we do the central idea of this ship around artisan work? So when I start a ship, I always start in the common areas, which would be the lobby, the stairs, the aft atrium, and the promenade, all of which work off the same common idea. In this case, I thought a garden atmosphere would be very nice on a ship. And I thought of the various artisan works that would go into a garden: ironwork, terracotta work, and stonework. You have the vertical columns sitting on stone beams covered in what looks like terracotta tile, and all this stone is actually artificial stone that is made out of fiberglass gypsum product, but it's chiseled to look like real stone. We have the ironwork going in between on the railings. And then I designed this chandelier that is made with candelabras on top of an iron frame, which can be at one time any particular color, or it can be a mix of colors. So it's a fantastic light show, all on a floral pattern of polished stainless steel, which is like a mirror, so that you have the floral effect, but you also have the infinite depth of mirror. Venetian Palace, this is our main theater, and the artisan work here is Murano glass. And the Murano glass is represented in several places. The big chandelier that look like carnival balloons, and there are smaller ones all around the room. But the most interesting part of that are the walls. The walls are all glass tiles. If you go into St. Mark's Cathedral, because it's so old and it's so settled, the walls are not flat and straight. They're bulgy and curved. I wanted to get a similar effect for that, with bulges and, not an even smooth surface. And also of particular interest are the carnival masks. They're all hand painted, and they're all done by the real artisans who do the best quality masks in Venice. This is the forward restaurant, it's the Golden Olympian, and the aft restaurant is the Silver Olympian. The artisan work here is silver making, and the Olympian comes from a Tiffany flatware pattern called Olympian. You'll see on the walls a giant, let's call it a fork handle, that's been bent to form an architectural element in which is a vitrine. And then all of the details that you see on the ceiling, these sort of flaring out pieces, and the pieces that also flare out and come up the balcony edge, those are all meant to look like the handles of flatware. And then in each vitrine, we have various antique flatware patterns. It's a really interesting collection, sort of a little museum of silverware. This is Glove's Sports Bar, and here the artisan work is leather making. Of course, I chose leather making because so many sports have gloves that are made out of leather, and they're represented here in many different ways. There are reproductions of all sorts of gloves in the ceiling, and the sofas are sort of a giant catcher's mitt. And then we have all these boxing gloves hanging over the bar itself. And there's also, by the way, vitrines that have very interesting antique gloves that have been worn by really famous people. Even the walls are done in leather. Czar's Palace is the casino, and the artisan work here is trompe-l'oeil. And the paintings that you see throughout the room are vistas taken from the Hermitage in Russia. So you'll also see that there are golden Russian double eagle medallions, as well as visages of Nicholas and Alexandra. This is the cafe, the Jardin Cafe, that's along the promenade, and here the artisan work is bead making. It's just a basic sign that I created to really show the craft of beadwork. And if you look really closely, you can see the hundreds of thousands of beads that make it up. This is the Hot and Cool Dance Club, and here the artisan work is tattoo. And so we have giant arms and legs that are holding up the ceiling or sticking up, and they all have authentic-looking tattoos. And they're all lit by ultraviolet light. There's actually lights in the hands that light the tattoos on the ceiling, and lights in the ceiling that lights the tattoos on the arms and legs. The backs of the sofas just look like fingers out of polished aluminum. It gives quite an interesting effect. The stage, this is the jazz club, and here the artisan work is wood carving. And I wanted the whole room to look like it was carved out of wood. So all the walls look like curtains, but carved out of wood. And then we made statues of various jazz musicians to look like they're cut out of wood. Piano Man. The craft here is ivory work. So the ceiling looks like it's made out of ivory panels. The walls are made out of these tiles that are made to look like ivory. The bar stools are actually like elephant tusks. And the light is that wavy-looking keyboard you see going around the room. And we even, when we found this great chair, we upholstered it to look like a piano key. Here, the Victoria Lounge. Here the craft was Majolica. And the Victorian era was a very strong period of Majolica work. So we have vitrines with the Majolica pieces, vases, and so forth in them. But I wanted to get a real-looking Victorian tile to put on the walls. And I found this particular tile, and it came from England, as a matter of fact. So I gave this to the shipyard, and they had them made. And they're hand-painted. And you look at those tiles, and they have the old crackle. They all look like they were salvaged from some old Victorian building in England. And, you know, they're really magnificent. And even the light fixtures are a pattern from that era. So the whole idea of Majolica has been used throughout to create this effect. Emil's restaurant, and here the artisan work is cameo glass. Emile is for Emile Gallet. Gallet was an artist of the Art Nouveau period who made these cameo glass lamps. Cameo glass is basically a laminated glass where they use different layers and different colors, and then they grind off one color to expose another color, like a cameo. And we had fabulous reproductions of the Gallet lamps. They absolutely look real. Then the drawing of the peacock standing on the railing is an original Gallet design sketch reproduced. And the Harry's Supper Club, here the artisan work is jewelry making, and I wanted it to look like not only a jewelry store, but to have these giant diamonds all around the room. Tennis bracelets with strings of diamonds. And then we created these stacks of gold rings that are the waiter stations. They're also on the bar fronts that have cabochon rubies and sapphires in them. Simulated, of course. And then we designed in vitrines. So take a look in the vitrines and look at some of these necklaces. They're made just like fantastic jewelry. They're made of gold. It's only the stones are fake. They're really some unbelievable pieces. What we have on board, it's an experience. It's something meant for you to have fun and enjoy and relax and all of those things that you've come on board the ship for. And we spare really no expense in making that happen. Almost nothing that you see on board is off-the-shelf material, so to speak. Everything follows the specifications that I mentioned, but they're all custom-made pieces. It's not a museum, but in a way it's like going to a museum because there is so much to see. And it will really enhance your cruise, I think, by making this a discovery process. My hope is that the environment itself will engender this type of exploration and discovery process. Further, I hope by the end of the cruise you haven't really seen everything yet and you'll want to come back again.